If you've ever watched the Stuntmen React videos, you've probably heard them say something like this.
It definitely looks cooler crashing through something.
Oh yeah. But if you pay attention, the stuff they themselves react the most to is stuff like this. Not the paper walls, not the breakaway tables, stuff like this.
See how they cap?
The props and pieces of the set that don't break. I've choreographed stuff like this myself. It's easy to pad up the actor for one specific shot with one specific camera angle. In this horror flick, we used the drywall just because it happened to be there. And I placed a few items on the shelf so that they could get knocked off. But the main idea here was to smash the actress's spine into this pillar. And it was easy to do. Underneath her shirt, she's wearing a pad from a Taekwondo chest protector. She was fine. Using non-breakaway props and sets doesn't mean you're gonna hurt the actors or stuntmen any more than with the breakaway stuff. I know it's tempting to make the heroes look amazing by busting through tables and railings and stuff, but I mean, at this point, it looks like a Simpsons gag, not a movie. Why is the railing just shattering? The idea with breakaway stuff in fight scenes is to make your audience feel like something hit harder than it really did. But at a certain point you lose them, and it just feels like a Simpsons gag. Out of all these clips from Drunken Master, the hit that you reacted the most to was probably this guy. Yeah, me too. That's brutal. But he is wearing padding on his chest, and the floor's padded. It's just tough to tell. That doesn't mean it's not a brutal hit, it's not a brutal fall. It is. But that one fall elicits more of a reaction from the audience than everything else with the breakaway stuff in the entire scene. At this point, it looks like you just touch something and it explodes. Here, Jackie falls through some stuff, and yeah, the wood looks pretty hard, but that metal piece on the wall looks flimsy as hell. And it really just makes it feel like that move was done because they had breakaway stuff that they wanted them to hit. But when we feel that way, we feel like, yeah, it's just a prop that was designed to break. So we don't care, and it doesn't register with us. This is an effect you have to be careful with when it comes to having breakaway stuff in fight scenes. In Jackie Chan's first Police Story movie, there is a ton of glass that gets broken. In fact, Jackie didn't want the glass to look like normal Hollywood breakaway glass, so they doubled the thickness of it. The double thickness means that people actually got hurt. Stuntmen were cut pretty much every stunt. In Jackie's autobiography, he writes about how they basically had a shuttle that just went from the set to the hospital and back to the set to pick up another round of stuntmen to take to the hospital. People were getting cut left and right every shot, but they used so much of it and they did it so frequently that it stopped registering with the audience and seemed more like a gag. Yeah, it's twice as thick and people are really getting hurt, but the audience doesn't know that. As far as we know, it's just breakaway glass and you've got a warehouse full of it that you're trying to get rid of. So lesson 1 in using breakaway stuff more effectively is to be a little more sparing with it. When you overwhelm us, it feels like you just had a whole lumber store that you had to get rid of, or a big pile of fake glass that was on sale. The audience starts reacting like this guy. Yeah, I guess the chair broke, okay. Oh, and if you reacted to that, it wasn't the glass breaking that you probably reacted to. Watch it again. I bet you reacted to him landing so hard on the ground, even though we can't see the ground and it's probably really well padded. So it's not about whether or not the stuntman gets hurt. That's not what gets us to react the way the corridor crew responded to these falls.
Yeah, they cap.
It's about our perception of how hard it was and whether or not we can relate to it. Very few of us have fallen through a glass table. Very few of us have been thrown through a glass window, but we have all hit our heads on something. We have all fallen onto the ground. We have all stubbed our toes. We have all come up against something that hasn't moved for us or broken for us. We're able to connect with those stunts and those hits more viscerally because it's stuff that's happened to us before. We're able to actually relate to it, whereas flying through a window or having a chair broken over our back isn't something that we can relate to. But backing into a cement pillar? Well, yeah, we've probably all been pushed into something, so a more violent looking version of that really registers with us. Check out this Ratchet stunt. Oh my god, that looks terrible. But check it out. In the one shot where the stunt doesn't happen, there's a 90-degree angle at this corner. That's hard wood. But when they cut away to the shot that actually contains the stunt, now it's more rounded in that section. They've added something in. They made a camera angle to hide it from us, and it's cut in a way where we're not supposed to notice. Yeah, exactly. That's the way you're supposed to do it. But just because we don't notice doesn't mean the stuntman is getting hurt more than he would with breakaway stuff. They've padded this for him. These falls and these hits are more visceral because because we've all experienced falling, but most of us haven't experienced being thrown through a window or a table. We've all experienced banging our head on something or stubbing our toe, but we haven't experienced having a chair broken over our back. So take advantage of what the audience is instinctively able to relate to. Glass? Yeah, it's fun and it's got a nice visual to it, so go ahead and put it in, but don't rely on that to be something the audience relates to and feels is a harder hit than the other stuff that's happened in the fight scene. This is the stuff that feels harder. Go ahead and use the glass for the aesthetic beauty of it, but why not mix it up? Why not integrate the two? Props that break, mixed with props and set pieces that don't break. This happens brilliantly in Jackie Chan versus Andy On in New Police Story. One thing you can do is have the stuntmen fall on things that aren't breakaway but eventually land on padded ground like this. The ground around this playground is entirely padded, but the initial things the stuntmen are hitting are real. Watch this Yun Biao fight. We don't care about the chair, it looks fake. The pillar looks fake. Of all these stunts, the one that hits the hardest for us is this railing thing. The prop that doesn't break. The one that the stuntman bounces off of. I think we need to make more of a conscious effort to use non-breakaway stuff in our fight scenes. Don't just look for ways to break something. Look for ways to use something and have it not break. Flipping wire stunts happen all the time with stuntmen going through stuff. Oh my god, but it feels completely different when the same stunt is done without any sort of breakaway thing to land on. This Ratchet stunt, this is done all the time with breakaway stuff, but the one time you see it without anything breakaway, holy hell, it is the thing you remember most from the fight scene. It doesn't just have to be falls either. Simple things like hitting his arm on the railing here, god, this is painful to watch, even though it's really easy to pad up his entire forearm. And when he flies through the glass table, I don't know about you, I didn't react to the table bit at all. The table looked like a toy. What I did react to was how hard he hit the ground, even though if you look closely, the ground is padded. Could be more padded, I'm sure, but regardless, he's doing the stunt, and if there wasn't a table there, it would have felt even worse than going through the table. This guy getting his legs kicked out and landing gut first on the armrest of the couch, well, he's got a huge amount of padding under his costume, so it's okay. He even puts his hands down first. What I'm trying to point out is these stunts with non-breakaway props, they feel amazing to watch. The audience can relate to them on a visceral, instinctive level that they can't with breakaway stuff, but it doesn't mean breaking your stuntman. Your stuntman can be easily padded. You just have to think these stunts through the way you would think through any other stunt. And when these stunts happen around a set that has no glass or wood, it feels more like it comes out of nowhere. Because when we see glass, we kind of expect, okay, they might break it, or we see a wooden table, okay, somebody might go through it. There's a chair, if somebody picks it up, we expect it to break. What we don't expect is, oh my god, somebody to go rib first onto this railing. I ended up doing this stunt accidentally in a production of Romeo and Juliet. This is me, and one day when we were doing 2 shows in one day, I spent too much time walking around and going up and down stairs between shows, so my legs ended up too tired during this fight scene. I did this flip stunt, and I basically landed just like Jackie Chan does here. But it was fine. I got up, I finished the fight, and nothing happened. But to the audience, there was an audible gasp when that happened. And there's certainly no shortage of proof that you can use non-breakaway props and be just as creative and visually interesting as using breakaway ones. And I'm not saying don't use balsawood or fake glass ever for any reason. It really shows Peter Parker's change in character when he's punching through the glass while trying to hit his supposedly best friend. But in terms of what the audience reacts to on a physical level, well, you've probably never punched through a window, and you've probably never fallen through a table. But I bet you reacted to Harry hitting the beam up here, because yeah, we've all smacked our head against something. One final note is if you're going to use breakaway stuff, it helps so much if you first show things not breaking. Police Story conditioned the audience to expect every piece of glass to break, and it did break, and nobody really cared by the end of the fight. Drunken Master II, we end up thinking every piece of wood's gonna break, so when the one piece doesn't break, it feels that much worse. So check out this Mission Impossible fight. Tom Cruise flying through the bathroom stall door actually feels pretty hard hitting. And that's because we see them both hitting the sides of the bathroom stall first without any damage happening. It looks like a solid, real stall. So when it happens, it doesn't feel like Tom Cruise has gone through a breakaway prop. But when the stuntman falls through a porcelain sink, it feels like, who cares? It was a breakaway sink anyway. It'd be different if we saw him land on one and have it not break first. They kinda had the right idea though. They did show before this part of the fight, Tom Cruise getting smashed into the sink. It just happened to be framed in a way where we could barely see the sink. We saw the faucet and maybe a bit of the sink for a couple of frames. They were really close to conditioning the audience to see those sinks as real, then having somebody break through one. And unfortunately, as soon as he breaks through the sink, he just pulls this pipe out of the wall. So now for the audience, it just feels like it's one big fake set, which is the opposite of what you want them to feel. The pipe came out without any effort. So when this happens, we feel like, yeah, the wall probably broke without any effort either, because it was just as real as the pipe was. You know, the pipe that was just sitting there, not attached to anything in the wall. So embrace the idea of stuff not breaking. If you're gonna break something, convince your audience that it's real first by having somebody hit it or use something like it beforehand, and be sparing with it. The more you break the same kind of item in a fight scene, the more it feels like a Simpsons gag, where the slightest touch will cause something to explode or crumble. Don't underestimate how much the audience is able to really connect on a visceral, instinctive level with stuff not breaking. It adds an entirely new layer to your fight scenes and increases the amount of trust your audience has that what's going on is real. Speaking of stuff not being real, if you want to see the fakest fight scene ever filmed, Mike Tyson versus Steven Seagal, who never actually fought but kinda had a movie fight somehow, well, click on this link to figure out how that happened. And if you want to see some cooler use of breakaway tables and padded floors, check out this breakdown of a fight scene from Falcon and the Winter Soldier that I did.